For all my new people, or for any new person following the Christ, following the Holy Spirit, here's what's going to happen. Sometimes you're going to ask questions and you don't get the answer right away. So for me, if I ask you a question, you may say, "Oh no," but that doesn't mean I'm going to forget about the question. And as time goes on, eventually I'll hear the answer to that question. Then I'll be like, "Oh, that was the answer." So things are brought back to my memory in that sense. So, for example, I can't tell you how long ago it was when I was presented with this question or this test. Nobody ever performed this test on me. Why a black child would pick a white doll. And that thought, it just never left me. But whatever their explanation was, whenever I heard it, I, or was made aware of that test or anything, I would have followed the research, whatever, blah blah blah. But so recently, the Holy Spirit gave me the answer. Now listen, I even asked a black man who was married to a white woman if he had ever heard of that test, and he said yes, he did, and he didn't understand why his daughter made that choice as well. So okay. So that was in like 2000 and maybe 16 through 2017 when I asked this interracial couple this question. So the Holy Spirit gave me the answer a couple of days ago. So this is what he told me. So again, we're talking about why a black child would pick a white doll. Okay. So number one is a child is innocent. So a child doesn't know anything about prejudice. I mean, they might have likes or dislikes, but basically they don't know anything about prejudice. They don't know anything about the black-white history and stuff like that. That's where you can see little black babies will just hug the heck out of a little white baby, or a little white baby would just hug the heck out of a little black baby. All right, so here's what's going on. Since that child is innocent, that child can see the choice, black doll, white doll. And the reason why they picked the white doll is because they're innocent. So they can see that white is a better pick. I mean, okay, so how is white a better pick for a child? Here's what the Bible said. Unless you become as a little child, you cannot see the kingdom of heaven. Now that's important. That should even have a therefore on it. Therefore, unless you become as a little child, you cannot see the kingdom of heaven. So you have to think. You might not be able to go back into your mother's womb. How can a man be born again? I think Nicodemus said. So this is what that means. Since the child is innocent and can clearly see that the white color is more beautiful than the black color, here's what's going to happen. When you become an adult, you're going to think like an adult. So here's how adults think. White, the legal definition for it. All right. The legal definition of white. Now check this out. The legal definition of white does not mean Caucasian. So, us as adults, we'd be like, that white person this, or that white person this, or white privilege, even worse. But here's the thing. The people that we're, calling white, They're not white. They're Caucasian. And the people that are actually white are the people like that look like me and you. So the innocent child can look at the choice that you're giving them, and though the black doll, looks like you, the what the child is seeing is the color. So the color of white is black people, indigenous people, Indians, Mexicans, and stuff like that there. But the child isn't sophisticated enough to put that all together. But they know what they like. So what they're saying to you, if you can become as a little child, you can understand this. So what they're saying is that they love their mom, they love their dad, they love their cousins and them, and they're looking at them like they're white. They're not looking at them like they're Caucasian. Now, they don't have a problem with Caucasians. Don't get me wrong. Little Caucasian kid and little black kids, they have the best hugs if you ever see those kinds of videos, because you know that they're not, prejudiced or anything. You'd be like, oh, I'm kind of thing. So this is what we can do as adults. We can take his yoke and learn of him. Now you have to understand that when you're learning about the Christ, blah, 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 the Son of God, blah, 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 sacrifice, blah, blah, blah. The Son of God was or understood legal talk. So, for example, a Sadducee and a Pharisee really equals a public defender and the district attorney. So the public defender is going to be, well, what's fair, you see, and the district attorney is going to be, sad. He's bringing charges and stuff like that. So he's not bringing no happy charges. These are happy charges. So every time he opened his mouth, beginning with John the Baptist, who spoke to the Sadducees just before the Christ was getting ready to get baptized. He asked him, he said, who warned you of the coming of the Lamb? Okay, so you just have to read that story, but it was one of the last things that John the Baptist did. Okay, so the Pharisees asked him, by whose authority do you baptize? And he explained to him, well, the Holy Spirit told me to do it. Jesus is my boss. Kind of thing. All right. And later, with his cousin coming into ministry, every time he was confronted by a Sadducee or Pharisee, a Sadducee or a Pharisee. Now, a Sadducee, again, would be the district attorney, and the Pharisee, of course, would be the public defender. Now, the public defender. So the problem with these two is they're in the same team, or they're at least both in the same baseball game. There's two different teams, but they're both playing baseball. So their objective is to play baseball. All right, if they're in a court or something. So when the Christ had gotten beaten, battered, and bruised, he still ended up in court. He ended up in Pontius Pilate's court. So it's court. No Sadducees there, no Pharisees there, no religious people there. And the Pontius Pilate said, do you know who I am? I have the authority to set you free. Blah, blah, blah. I'm not looking at the scripture. So you just have to read it. And his response was, you have no authority over me unless it is given you. So that means he gave him authority. Now, this is what we do, but we haven't learned it. We give authority to the Sadducees and the Pharisees, or we give authority to the courts. Now, if you're at least going to do that, at least give them authority because you're because you're being an example for someone, I don't know, not as strong as you, but we give them authority, and we're not aware of it. So a couple of ways that we give them authority is just by what you say. There is power in the tongue. In the power in the tongue, there is the power of life and death. Okay, so if you say to someone, "Oh, white people this," or "Oh, white people that," or "A white person that," or "White man this," or whatever, what you're doing is you're transferring the authority that you have, and they're accepting that authority, like Pontius Pilate did, or he filled in, or whatever role he was playing. It was an authoritative role, but he didn't have the authority over the Christ until the Christ said, "You have no authority unless." So he's beaten, he's battered, he's bleeding, he's hurting, but I'm pretty sure he said it like this: "You have no authority over me unless it's given you." Now, when he's saying it's given you, even though he's beaten, battered, and bruised, you have to remember how the Christ answered questions. So he's saying it's unless. All right, stop, full stop. And then he looked at him and said, "It's given you from above." So the Pontius Pilate didn't have authority before the Christ went in there, but after speaking with the Christ, the authority was given to him from the Christ from above at that moment. He didn't have authority because his wife even told him. She was like, "Hey, don't have nothing to do with that man. That man is innocent." Okay, so he's innocent. You're innocent until proven guilty. That's why he had to end up in a court. So basically, the tongue, in the tongue is the power of life and death. So what you say is how you're going to be treated. So for example, if a cop pulls you over and you be like, "Blah, blah, blah, blah," that's how you're going to get treated. Okay, so you have to order your speech right. And the way you're going to order your speech right is going to see what he said. So you have to order yourself to do that. If he can order authority to somebody who's getting ready to kill him, you can sure order your speech right if you're also in the presence of someone who could kill you. All right, so that's my story. If you have any questions, I'm always I'm checking for comments.